Let's install Python. We will be installing Python from the official website. Also choose to add Python to path. Let's verify the installation from command prompt. The installation was successful. Let's install Visual Studio Code. Visual Studio Code is a popular lightweight code editor from Microsoft. It is mostly used for front-end web development. Let's install Postman. We will be using Postman to test our REST APIs. Let's install pgadmin, which we will be using to connect to PostgreSQL and create the necessary database objects. We are required to set a master password the first time we log in. Let's install the necessary modules needed for our Django project. First, let's install the Django module. To create REST APIs, we need to install Django REST Framework. By default, the Django project comes with a security that blocks requests coming from different domains. To disable this, let's install Django Core's headers module. Now let's create the Django project. Open the command prompt in the desired folder and type the command. Django admin start project and the name of the project. Let's open Visual Studio Code inside the project path. Let's take a look at some of the important files in the project. init.py file is just an empty file that indicates that the given folder is a Python project or a Python module. asgi.py is the entry point for the ASGI-compatible web servers. wsgi.py is the entry point for the WSGI-compatible web servers. urls.py file contains all the URL declarations needed for this project. settings.py file contains all the settings or the configurations needed for the project. manage.py is a command line utility that helps interact with the Django project. Let's simply run the project and see how it looks in the browser. Just type python space manage py space run server. The app is now running in the port 8000. Let's copy the URL and open in the browser. What you see on the screen is the default template that comes with every Django project. Now let's create an app in our Django project. Quick difference between projects and apps. The folder structure that you currently see on the screen is called the project. A project may have multiple apps. For example, you can have one app which acts like a blog, or maybe another app which acts like a survey form. Currently, this project does not have any app. Let's create one app to implement our API methods. To create an app, we need to type this command: python space manage.py space start app space the name of the app. Next, let us register the app and the required modules in settings.py file. In the installed apps section, let's add REST framework, CORS header, and the newly created app. We need to add the CORS headers in middleware section as well. We will also add instruction to enable all domains to access the APIs. This is not recommended in production. Instead, just add only those domains that needs to be whitelisted. Let's create the models needed for our app. We need two models, one to store department details and another one to store employee details. The department's model will have two fields, one to store an auto-incremented department ID and another one to store department name. Employee model will have 5 fields: employee ID, employee name, department, date of joining, and photo file name, which stores the uploaded profile picture file name. We will be using PostgreSQL as the database to create the tables from these models. To connect to PostgreSQL from our Django app, we need to install the database adapter. Let's install it with the command pip install psycopg2. Let's open pgadmin and create a Postgre database for our app. I have procured a PostgreSQL server from Azure Database Service. I will be connecting to the same. Let's create a database for our application. We see that currently there are no tables in the database. Let's add the database details in the settings.py file of our Django app. Now let's create the tables from these models. Let's write the command to make migrations file for our models. After executing this, we can see a migration file which tells us what changes to the database will be done. Once it looks fine, we can execute the command to push these changes to the database. Let's now refresh the database. We see that the database tables are now created. Let's run select query on them. We see that currently we don't have any data. Let's insert some record into it. Let's create serializers for our models. Serializers basically help to convert the complex types or model instances into native Python data types that can then be easily rendered into JSON or XML or other content types. They also help in deserialization, which is nothing but converting the past data back to complex types. Let's now start writing the API methods. Open view.py file. We are importing CSRF decorator to be able to allow other domains to access our API methods. We need JSON parser to parse the incoming data into data model. Let's import the models that we created. And also the corresponding serializer classes. Let's write our API methods for departments table. The method will receive an optional ID which we will need to use in the delete method. In get method we will return all the records in JSON format. We are making use of serializer class to convert it into JSON format. The parameter safe equal to false is basically used to inform Django that what we are trying to convert to JSON is actually a valid format and we are fine if there are still any issues in it. Let's write post method which will be used to insert new record into departments table. We are parsing the request and using the serializer to convert it into model. If the model is valid, we save it into the database and return success message. Next, let's complete the put method which will be used to update a given record. First, we are capturing the existing record using department ID. Next we are mapping it with new values using Serializer class. And save it if the model is valid. Finally, let's implement the delete method. We will be passing the ID to be deleted from the URL. Let's now add routes to specify the URLs for our API methods. Add a new file urls.py. The delete method will receive ID in the URL. Next we need to include these URLs in the main urls.py file. Now let's test our API methods. Let's first start the project using the command python space manage.py space run server. Let's test get method, which returns all data from the table. We see that get method works as expected. Let's test the post method to insert new data. The post method also works, and we can verify it by calling the get method again. Let's test put method and update a record. The put method also works as expected. Finally, let's test the delete method. The delete method also works as expected. Let's now implement the API methods for employee table. Let's add the URL routes as well. Let's now test these APIs. We see that the employee API methods also work as expected. Let's add an API method to save the uploaded profile picture. To store the images, let's first create a folder in our app. To be able to use this folder, we need to add some instructions in the settings.py file. Now let's add the API method. We are making use of default storage module to save the file. Once it is saved, we simply return the file name. Let's add a URL route for our API method. Let's now test the API method by uploading a file. We see that the upload file API works as expected.